Now, a lot of y'all are all used to me bashing and hating on the Google Pixel line of phones, okay? But men can change. And I have changed. Lots of things do change and opinions and preferences can alter. I mean, just look at 2020. So much has changed so fast and so unexpectedly, and I'm just now realizing that the first year Google knocks it out of the park with a Pixel product is one of the worst years of my life. Thanks, Google. Your gain is our loss. Let's talk about the Pixel 4a. Alright, first off, by far, the best feature of this phone has to be the display. The fact that it's $350. Keep in mind, that means with tax, right? That's all the money that comes out whenever we buy products here that goes towards the government, who uses it ever so well. Even with tax, it's under $400, okay? The iPhone SE, which is probably gonna come up a lot in the comment section today, the iPhone SE can't even say that. Plus, the iPhone SE is at 64 gigs of storage. This one defaults at 128. Now, it does only come in one color, but it's kind of a solid, epic color. It's matte black. It is plasticky, but premium feeling. You know, it doesn't have that kind of crackling, cheap feeling to it. It still feels solid, and also, they did not cheap out on the taptic feedback. So, I love the feeling of notifications and typing on the keyboard. All of that stuff is really, really satisfying, and the fact that the display has flat bezels. Thank you, Google. Finally, someone gets it. The curved edge display thing, it's not better. They keep trying to push that on us like that's somehow more futuristic. It really isn't. You're just kind of warping the image a little bit more, because if the display curves off the edge, then that makes it futuristic, because the pixels go this way a little bit on the thought. It doesn't, I don't prefer that look, to be honest with you. And there's a little bit of a chin, but for the most part, the camera cutout is very small off to the side. Personally, I kind of like it in the middle. It kind of throws me off when there's widgets and stuff up there that has to move alongside the little camera cutout. So nitpicky, small detail. Google, if you're thinking about the Pixel 5a for next year, camera module in the middle would be fine. However, given we're reaching a point where Androids are all starting to look the same, I can kind of see how where you put the camera hole kind of dictates, is this a Samsung or not? So if every Android started putting the camera hole in the center, then they would all start to look identical. So I guess, yeah, put it off to the side if you want to be different in some way, shape, or form, though I'm sure Google is not the only company doing that. Another surprising good feature on a $350 phone like this is the stereo speakers. I've watched a lot of videos on this and listening to music on it, and it sounds pretty dang good. I was kind of impressed. I was thinking here they might cheap out because where are they cutting corners, right, to get the phone this cheap, but that's not there. So if you're using your phone a lot of the time for watching videos or listening to music, of course, the speakers are pretty good. However, there is this giant hole when it comes to quality control. I know Google has issues in the past, and this giant hole at the top of the phone is just, you know, very obvious, and you can tell, you know, they did not build this unibody correctly, because I have no idea what the purpose of this hole is, and I still can't find a single cable that actually fits there. So I don't think it's a port of any kind. Pretty sure, yeah, that's just a manufacturing issue, right? So, man, just gaping holes in the phone? Come on, Google, get your stuff together. The power button originally I thought was white, but it's actually a bit more of a minty green, which people in the comments had to point out to me, which now I'm like, oh yeah, it's very, very slightly green. But this button layout is not my personal favorite. I'm kind of okay with having volume on one side and power on the other. It's easier to use those buttons when the phone's in your pocket and that kind of thing, and screenshotting's typically easier when the buttons are on both sides of the device, but not that big a deal. Again, very hard to complain with a phone this cheap. And when it comes to the cameras, it's, you know, what you should expect from most Pixel hardware. Is pretty solid, I can't lie. I won't say it's groundbreaking like so many people have made it out to be, of like, oh, Pixel is unmatched in photo quality. No, I've taken some of these pictures and the lighting's not perfect, or it's a little bit blurry on the edges, but still, for what people use their smartphone for, it's a great camera. The color accuracy is awesome, night mode is epic, and while there's only one lens, you're still able to take some very, very high quality pictures, and I apologize I wasn't able to leave the house to take more photos with this thing because it's very smoky out here and it's dangerous to go outside and everything's shut down because of the pandemic, and 2020 is just a beautiful year, isn't it? I live in hell, essentially. I am surrounded by fire. So I had to stay inside the house for the photography, but still, the portrait mode shots are decent, and video-wise,
Pixel's not always known for their video, but this is how 4K looks, and that's alright. Can't really complain.
The only thing I will complain about is the design of the camera. I'm still very, very confused as to why they wanted to make it a square. Maybe just because they feel like that's what everybody's doing these days, is we have the square camera bumps, and because it's square, that makes it futuristic and more flagship-y. There's a fun word. Say flagship-y 10 times and tag me on Twitter. But yeah, I do find that a little bit weird that they wanted to accommodate the flash and the camera into one module, even though there's no rear-facing microphone like iPhones have. So if they were accommodating the microphone in there, you might have had a little bit of a better argument, but no. However, from a design standpoint, I must say I think this is one of the best-looking Pixels Google has ever made. Probably the best because it's just so minimal and clean. You got your fingerprint reader, you got the Google logo, because you gotta remember who you're buying from, and the lens. Other than that, it's a very clean, very simple design. The front of it, obviously, whether the display is on or off, looks great. Fingerprint reader being on the back is not my favorite location for a biometric, but since my fingers aren't full of psoriasis anymore, I can unlock it, and it's worked great. And again, I would prefer something like Face ID or a fingerprint reader underneath the display, but every time I try to critique this phone, I can't, because it's just so cheap. I'm like, well, 350 bucks though, comparative to other flagships I'm thinking of, there's just no debate. Of course, this thing is going to be the best bang for your buck for those of you who are in the Android department. And, you know, they did compromise in the aspect of the Snapdragon chip, which is absolutely not great, though with my first week of performance, I haven't really noticed it. It's loaded things fine. There's been a few times where apps will lag out and be a little bit crashy. Not all the time, though. I've tried to capture it on video where an app crashes or an app lags out, and the truth is, it's so rare that I haven't been able to recreate it for the camera, so I'm not able to film it doing this. But I have seen people in the comment section of my videos talk about the Pixel 3a and how after a year of use it really starts slowing down. So when it comes to longevity, that's probably your biggest loss with the Pixel 4a. That Snapdragon chip is not top of the line, and it's really not that fast, which means that the first year you have it, it'll probably be fine. But if you're planning on buying a phone and keeping it for 2, 3, 4 years, that's when this thing is probably going to start getting real sluggish and slow. I hope I'm wrong. I hope they can, you know, provide updates with this and allow it to last a long time, but that's just from experience with the Pixel A line in the past and people realizing, hey, when you put in slower Snapdragon chips, they're not going to age super well. But that display is certainly going to age very well. I can tell you that confidently, because for the next 3 to 4 years of smartphones, this type of design with just, you know, all screen and then a little camera cutout, that's going to be pretty normal. That's going to be pretty standard. So if you care about your phone looking the same for a long time and not aging comparative to all new smartphones coming out, that's the priority you have here. You know, the iPhone SE is pretty cheap and it will get 6 years of software support, but the design of it is pretty dated. So if you care about bezels and design and having a futuristic looking smartphone, the SE definitely feels like a few steps backward compared to this. Though when it comes to the camera cutout, this is actually a perfect time to explain to you guys why I shoot my videos at 16:9 compared to a lot of people in the tech community that start shooting in 2:1. Smartphones are changing their camera cutouts and their aspect ratios all the time. So actually, when tech YouTubers film in 2:1 and you start watching their videos on a phone like this, the camera hole still cuts into the content and turns into kind of a notch. And you can choose to embrace it and have the camera cut out on the screen while you're watching a video. However, when you watch my kind of content, when it is 16:9, the camera hole will not show up for a 16:9 video, which means that you don't have any intrusions if you don't want to. But if you want to utilize the entire display, you can still pinch in and embrace the camera hole. So in my opinion, having 16:9 actually gives the user more options to if they want intrusions on the content or not. Whereas 2:1, when there's phones like this in existence, it just means you have to deal with a cutout no matter if you pinch in or not. The biggest missing things from the Pixel 4a is most likely wireless charging. It still feels weird that Google sells the Pixel stand, which is my favorite wireless charger, by the way. It's awesome. And yet currently this is the only phone they sell and they don't work together. It would be so awesome if I could use the $350 4a with the $80 Pixel stand, but they don't, because wireless charging, I guess, is too expensive, and water resistance, of course, would be very much appreciated. So is there some things they could add to the 4a next year to make it better? Absolutely. Those two would probably be high on my list. Not 5G, okay? Let me establish that from the beginning. Google, the fact that this could be the only phone you sell this year that doesn't have 5G is probably why it's going to be the best-selling phone of this this year because no one cares. The buttons are also very, very clicky, and I mean this in kind of a negative way. I mean, there's been situations where I'm on my phone and I'm next to my wife who's taking a nap, and she's trying to just relax and get some rest after a long day of work, but me, the idiot, is changing volume because I can't hear the video I'm watching that well, and those clicks are so loud that it wakes her up. Yeah, that's how loud it is. So Google, if you could minimize the clickiness of the next generation's buttons, I'd appreciate that. So the other huge selling point that the Pixel 4a will even have over the iPhone 12 is that it does actually ship with a charger in the box. A fast charger nonetheless. And again, under $400, it's still shipping with a fast charger. Yep, Google, I gotta admit, there's a lot of Apple sheep out there that I'm very much aware of, and a lot of you probably thinking, well, you know, iOS is better and the ecosystem's better, and for some of you that's true, but the truth is, there's a lot of you out there that don't care about the ecosystem or about iOS, and if any of you guys, either in my personal life or in the YouTube space, don't really care about ecosystem and software support, and you just need a phone that works, that's good quality, I gotta recommend this one. I just have to. The price point and the features you get out of it are solid. The camera's excellent. The battery is enough. You know, it'll get you through the day, and probably not much longer, but it's enough. And the display is awesome for the form factor it's in. It's a very large screen, and if you're in the market for an Android and you don't want to break the bank, absolutely. Pixel 4a is an easy to recommend, simple phone. Can you please let me back into Team Pixel now, Google? I said all the good things. I want my life back. Anyway, thank you all for watching. This is your Pixel sheep here, and I'll see you in the next one. Google, please.